This is a TalkStation original podcast.
I'm Captain Mark with this week's Boating Safety Minute, brought to you by your U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, right here in Morehead City, where the water temperature this week will be in the mid-60s. Question: what does an orange flag with a black square and circle mean? Hint: it is not an indication that scuba diving is taking place. It is a distress signal flag. This orange flag has a black square over a black circle. It is the duty of any boat operator observing such a flag to stop and render aid. This signal shall not be displayed unless assistance is needed. Local notice to mariners: Barden Inlet buoys number 26 and 27 are off station. These Boating Safety Minutes are a public service of your U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. I'm Captain Mark, and remember, an educated boater is a safe boater.
Looking for the best adventure on the Crystal Coast? Step aboard with H2O, Captain Eco Tour, private boat excursions, and experience the coast like never before. Cruise the Intracoastal Waterway. Search for wild horses on Shackleford Banks and the Rachel Carson Reserve. Spot playful dolphins, explore hidden shelling beaches, and enjoy unforgettable sunsets. Every trip is a private eco tour for up to 6 passengers, led by a U.S. Coast Guard 100-ton licensed master captain and authorized tour guide of the National Park Service and Rachel Carson Reserve. Perfect for families, couples, and visiting friends. Book your adventure today at h2ocaptain.com. That's h2ocaptain.com. H2O Captain, where the Crystal Coast comes alive. Welcome aboard.
Ahoy there, friends of the Crystal Coast, and north up to Little Washington. Welcome aboard the Scoop Deck, your go-to spot for local stories, coastal insights, and the people shaping life right here along our beautiful shoreline. Writing in this week was Teresa B. from New Bern, where she states, "Your Scoop Deck this evening was really fascinating, fun, informative, and educational too. The curator of the North Carolina Maritime Museum was wonderful. The Scoop Deck is sure to become a successful, great podcast. Wishing you all the best." I'm Captain Mark, and today we're diving into a topic that touches us all. Whether you're running a business, heading to the beach, or just trying to beat the summer traffic, tourism is the lifeblood of our area. But it also brings questions. How do we grow without losing what makes this place special? How do we support local businesses while managing the crowds? And what does the future of our coastal community really look like? Well, today, we've got the perfect guest to help navigate those waters. Joining us is Jim Browder, Executive Director of the Crystal Coast Tourism Development Authority. Jim plays a key role in how our area is promoted, how visitors experience our coast, and how tourism dollars flow through our community. We're going to talk about the real impacts of tourism, what's working, what's changing, and what it all means for those of us who call this place home. Thank you for spending part of your Saturday night with the Scoop Deck. So grab your choice of beverage, sit back, and let's get into it. Welcome, Jim Browder.
Thank you, Captain Mark, and I appreciate you having me on your show.
It's an honor. Tourism is vital here, but locals sometimes feel the strain. Traffic, crowds, rising cost. How do we balance attracting visitors while protecting the quality of life for its residents?
Well, that's actually been our primary mission for years, is to what we call is maintain the sense of place. Each of the 11 communities have their own unique identity, and our intention was to grow tourism, but not take away from what people expect when they go from one town to the other. For example, is when we advertise, we do not ever advertise the summer months. We let them just take care of themselves naturally. Our sole focus is to work on the shoulder and off-season months. The reason behind that is if we can build the off-seasons and the shoulder seasons, then the infrastructure is already here. It doesn't change whatsoever. All the businesses are here. They just get a longer shelf life, so to speak, in terms of making revenues. It has more consistent employment throughout the year. Most of them don't have to close down the winter months anymore like they used to. So we built we're trying to work on a plateau rather than a peak. If we were to drive the summer months, that's just going to drive development. So we completely stay away from that. So over the last many years, 7 or 8 years I've been here, actually occupancy has not grown that much. It's all been revenue. So you're not really seeing that many more people since probably 9/11. Well, not 9/11 and going all the way back there when you had your first bump years and years ago. Then it kind of plateaued again, and then as COVID rolled around, you had another plateau. And then what we've done is maintain that, but drive the revenues, not the people.
Wow, so you're emphasizing about making the Crystal Coast more of a year-round destination.
Correct.
What's working so far, and what still needs to happen?
Well, what we've identified recently is that it has worked very, very well in the fall months and into the holidays. We've seen steady growth over the last several years. Where it hasn't grown much, it's grown, but it's very little, is in the early spring. So, in fact, going into this next fiscal year, we've reshuffled our advertising to be a little bit more focused on the early and late spring months. So we're hoping we can shift that needle too.
So we're in that part of the season now of April, May. What is the biggest obstacle that if the fall into the winter is working, what needs to happen now in April, May?
I think it was the timing of our advertising needed to be shifted. The booking cycles, they're very difficult to follow here because we have so many vacation rentals. Somebody who rents an 8-bedroom home is going to book it a year out, but somebody who books a 2-bedroom condo could be booking it a week or two out. So your booking cycles vary quite a bit. Hotels are a lot more short-term than the vacation rentals. So what we've done is we are going to run dual programs through the winter, where so it used to be we'd push the fall events and the holidays and things. We will run a secondary campaign at the same time, trying to promote the spring and the early part of the summer.
So where are you running these campaigns? I know that the Raleigh area is probably the largest feeder market to the Crystal Coast. But where else are you putting those advertising dollars into? Well,
it is, again, this goes back a few years, probably 5 or 6 years ago. We used to do the vast majority of our advertising was in North Carolina. And when we did get an influx of additional funds during COVID, because the occupancy and the revenues went so high, that what we did was we kind of banked that money for a rainy day. And as we started getting into as it started tapering off after COVID, we shifted our advertising up into the I-95 corridor, up into Virginia and D.C. area and into Baltimore. Then when I say shifted, we didn't take money from North Carolina. Those were additional funds. We spent $1 million to $1.5 million up in that area. So because our anticipation was with the rates going up the way they did, we were going to lose some of our North Carolina market. We went up the I-95 corridor because the household income is double what it is in North Carolina. So we were figuring let's replace it with somebody who could afford a little bit more money. So we did lose 4% of our North Carolina market, but we picked up 5% of that market out of the I-95 corridor. And then each year we have looked at it a little bit further because it's gotten a lot more competitive over the last couple of years. So we've stretched those dollars into Philadelphia and to New York. And then last year we spent $1 million in Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. So we're looking for new markets to fill the voids.
So it's interesting that you've gone north of the Crystal Coast for those additional visitors or new visitors. Is there, everybody loves Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and it's interesting as a boat captain, I've gotten some people from Florida, and I'm like, why are you here? And they just will respond, we don't have wild horses down there, and this is the closest place to the wild horses. Yeah. Do you think it is worth spending time, effort, advertising dollars south of the Crystal Coast to bring those people north, as opposed to bringing the northerners south?
Not really.
Okay.
Reason being is you are competing with so many other destinations, and you are in larger markets where the advertising spend is quite a bit of money. It's going to cost you a whole lot more to advertise in Atlanta than it will in Raleigh. And then you're trying to get a very small piece of the pie. So you're better off fishing where the fish are, if you pardon my.
Yeah.
The fish are up north, and Ohio and Pennsylvania are number 2 and number 3, or number 3 and number 4 markets. While yes, we get a lot of business out of North Carolina, if you were to combine our Virginia, D.C., and Maryland market, it is equal to North Carolina. So the expansion that we have made has been working. But again, you have to understand we're offsetting business. The big push this last year, and age brings a little bit of wisdom sometimes, but when the international markets had started to dry up for a lot of political reasons, we don't deal much in the international market. But the problem being is that where I used to work down in Florida, that was major business in the international markets. Of course, what happens is the people with the big money, Disney, Universal, all the rest of them, have to fill that void. So what do? They go after my customer. So now I'm competing with other destinations. Now you'll even see New York and Vegas advertising in North Carolina pretty heavily, as everybody's going after the domestic market. So we have to compete with that. So while we're not going after internationals, we never were going after internationals, we have to compete against a lot of other places now.
Getting back to the locals for a moment, how does the TDA make sure tourism dollars actually benefit small, locally owned businesses, not just the larger operations?
Well, the unique thing about the Crystal Coast is everything is a small business. If you don't work for the government or the hospital or the school system, you're a small business. And so any business that we bring to town is benefiting small business. Realistically, over the last several years, our job is to drive economic impact, tourism-related economic impact. So by doing so, the greatest amount of economic impact we can create is by somebody who stays overnight. It's not just the lodging component, but they tend to eat out more, they tend to buy gas, they buy groceries, so you get a lot more spend if somebody spends the night. So most of our advertising has been out of market. Our number one asset, of course, is the beach. But you sell the major components, as you mentioned, horses, the beaches, and so forth. And then when you get here, then our job is to help get you to spend money in the county. If you walked into our visitor center, there's nothing other than Carteret County. We don't talk about any other town around us. We try and keep people here to spend money. Now, what has happened, there's been shifts in the market and in our advertising to accommodate the shifts in the school schedules. And it's not just Carteret County. It's Mecklenburg, it's Wake County, it's even up in Fairfax County in Virginia. They are encroaching on the summer a lot more. So we're having to shift our advertising a little bit to go after grandparents, double income, no kids, and those type of groups to try and fill those voids. What traditionally used to be very strong summer months, we're trying to fill them with people without kids right now. Now the negative side of that is now instead of 4 people eating in a restaurant, you have 2 people eating in a restaurant. So while it might help the lodging industry, it's going to not be beneficial necessarily for all the other small businesses. So we are putting in our budget next year almost, I think, between $200,000, $250,000 just to go after what we call day trippers. That's the New Bern, the Greenvilles, the Wilmingtons, to try and get them to drive up for the day and have lunch or go to the beach or whatever to try and help the small businesses to offset some of that advertising a little bit. So,
because all this business is coming in and restaurants are doing what seems to be a really strong business now, does this get reflected in short-term rentals that appear to be booming? From your perspective, how does that impact tourism, and what concerns do you hear from locals about housing availability?
I don't really think it has an effect on housing availability. If anything, it creates more construction. In some cases, they're tearing down an old building and putting up a new one. But on the other side of the coin is there are becoming a lot more short-term rentals. And of course, as we create more of a year-round economy, there's more interest in developers to put apartments and other things around here. If it was all peaked in the summer, they would not go through that investment. So if anything, the tourism patterns that we created actually are helping development.
So with that development is growth, and could there be, as visitors numbers are growing, do you feel our infrastructure, roads, parking, boat access, etc., can keep up? And where do you feel the pressure points are?
I think the pressure points are less from tourism as they are the new people moving into the county. Again, our numbers in terms of bodies that we bring into the area have not grown significantly. It's more on the revenue side. So I don't know that we're creating a larger infrastructure problem, because if it's spread and it's coming in the fall, the infrastructure is already there. What's happening, though, are more people are moving to the area. That number is really going up. That's what's driving housing costs. That's what's driving the other. A visitor doesn't necessarily come in and buy a house. That doesn't drive the cost up. Might drive the rental up, but that's a supply and demand issue.
But the locals who are in the service business for the visitors are or might be having problems with rental costs going up. And all of a sudden they are maybe no longer living here, but further away, yet have to commute here to work in the service businesses.
I think it's gotten better than it was a few years ago. There's a couple of challenges with labor. Number one, it gets back to the school calendars. We have less labor during the summer month if the kids are still in school. That creates one problem. Number two is there have been federal legislation to stop a lot of the international hires in terms of summer help. Because a lot of our properties in the area actually did bring people in from whether it be Jamaica or Eastern Europe to work for the summer months, and a lot of that's gone away because of the restrictions put on that. So there is a bit of struggle all the way across the board. That's why you see a lot of restaurants in the area and shops, even in the summer months. The busy summer months are still only opening 5 days a week.
Yeah, they're closed Mondays and Tuesdays.
It really has little or nothing to do with being able to take the people. It has to be able to servicing them and having the schedules for a full week. That's where you run into the big problem.
You'd mentioned revenue before. Can you discuss with us, or can you share with us, how much money is generated in our area due to tourism, and how does that money come back to the local community?
Well, I used the statistics from the Visit North Carolina, the state tourism office, and they're part of the Department of Economic Development with the state, and they provide our numbers for us every year. Now, their numbers are like a year old by the time we get them. So the numbers we have are actually from 2024. They don't come out for 2025 until August of this year, I believe. But yeah, the numbers we have at tourism-related revenue is $743 million a year into Carteret County. It translates a couple different ways. One is it saves each taxpayer $729 a year in taxes. Because if we didn't have the infrastructure, they would have to be writing those checks. So the state average is about $480. So we're helping them save on their taxes. Number two is local sales tax. Almost it was just shy of $30 million went to local sales tax from tourism-related businesses. So there's a lot of money that tourism generates to help offset. It helps pay for education, help pay for a lot of things in the area. So I'll give you an example. I had town council, Emerald Isle, one time asked me to speak to them, and we were having a discussion about tourism, occupancy taxes, and all the other things. So I said, I'll just give you a good example. Take the population of Emerald Isle and compare it to the same population of Benson, North Carolina. The budget in Benson, North Carolina, it was about $4.7 million for the town. Emerald Isle is $15 million. Same population. shows the impact of what tourism does, whether it be, and don't get me wrong, we don't create all that money. Our job is to help it grow every year. It's the entrepreneurs that started this a long time ago, built the hotels, built the businesses around tourism, that they're the ones that should get credit for all that revenue. Our job is to try and help manage it and grow it.
Couple more questions for you. Working with local partners, how closely does the TDA work with fishermen, charter captains, eco tour operators to promote that authentic coastal experience?
We try and work with all of our partners across the board equally. We have a very unique visitor's guide compared to most destinations. Ours is a 100-page book, and we list all tourism-related businesses in there. They all get free listings on our websites, and of course we refer them on a regular basis over the phone and when they walk into our visitor center. So there's a lot of territory to cover, but I think across the board we do a pretty good job of referring business. So
cool. If you had one message directly to give to the locals listening right now, what would you want them to understand about what the TDA is trying to do?
I don't think the TDA is really trying to do anything except for what I said earlier was maintain that sense of place. It's what makes us very, very unique. We don't want to be a Myrtle Beach. We don't want to be an Outer Banks. We're a kind of a happy medium in the middle. We've got a wonderful culture and very, very friendly people. And so the intent isn't to drive the market to the point that it disrupts our culture here. And so I think we've done a really good job of balancing that, and that plan is going to continue for the future.
And in the future, 5 years from now, what does success look like for you? And what would you want the locals to say about tourism here?
I'm hoping in 5 years, everything looks exactly the way it does today, and there's just a lot more money coming in.
There you go. I love it. Yeah. Good for all of us. Well, Jim Browder, thank you. We really appreciate you coming aboard the Scoop Deck and sharing your perspective with us this evening. Tourism is such a big part of life here on the Crystal Coast, and your numbers bear that out, obviously, and thank you for sharing those numbers. And conversations like this help us all better understand where we're headed and how we can all be a part of shaping that future. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to share it with a friend, a neighbor, and anyone who loves this stretch of coastal North Carolina as much as we do. The Scoop Deck wishes to thank Kenneth L. Weissman for his wonderful music, and Ross, my producer and engineer of the show. All episodes of the Scoop Deck are available on our website at thescoopdeck.com. Keep your lines tight, your compass steady, and we'll see you right here on the Scoop Deck next Saturday night when we will welcome the Honorable Dr. Greg Murphy, representing North Carolina's 3rd Congressional District. Thank you again, Jim Browder. And remember, you heard it here first on the Scoop Deck. This is Captain Mark, out.